Hey guys, welcome. We are going to be looking at some events leading to the Civil War today. I hope that you already printed off these notes. It's 2 pages. I went ahead and just glued them in, both of them. So 1 and 2, so that you got some pictures and the notes so we can talk about some things that were happening. When last we met, we learned about some major differences between the North and the South. And we learned about some famous people, some abolitionists that were helping speak out against slavery. And we learned about the Underground Railroad, and that was helping slaves escape those southern states where the plantations were. And while all that is going on, and while our country is growing and expanding out west, we have to make new laws, to help the North and the South get along, because they have very different lifestyles. And also we've gained all this land out west. So we're going to dive right in to the Missouri Compromise of 1820. I'm sorry, I know that is as blurry as it can be. And the print copy is just not as pretty as the one on the screen. So I'm going to need my highlighter and my red pen and my pencil or black pen to kind of understand what's happening. So 1820, that's before the California Gold Rush. That started in 1848. Remember, we talked about the 49ers. So 1820, we're talking 29 years before that even happened. So we've really just gotten the Louisiana Territory here. Okay, so I'm going to take my highlighter and I'm going to come down this line. I see unorganized territory. I'm going to come down this line here and come on down to Louisiana. That's the Mississippi River right in there. Okay, so where I have my highlighter there to the west is what we're calling the West. Of course, we have the southern states and the northern states. We have the slave states and the freed states still, okay? And right here is Missouri. Now, in 1820, Missouri was starting to get enough people are starting to come across that Mississippi River into it after Louisiana Purchase of 1803. By 1820, folks are moving in. They're getting enough people there to become a state. And when they decide to become a state, they want to enter it in as a slave state, which would mean more votes for the slave states. That's going to affect laws. So I'm going to read you a little blurb about the compromise, the Missouri Compromise of 1820. So the plantations that grew rice and cotton and sugar and other crops in the South depended on the work of slaves. To make sure that slavery would continue, the South demanded that it be allowed in the new Western states entering the Union. So the South is like, all those new states we're adding out west, slavery. When the Missouri Territory applied for admission into the Union, into the United States in 1819, it applied as a slave state. Missouri's admission would give the South control of the Senate, since there would be 12 slave states to the 11 free states. Northern congressmen opposed admitting another slave state. They proposed that Congress abolish slavery in Missouri. Well, this set off a bitter argument between the Northerners and the Southerners in Congress. Senator Henry Clay from Kentucky was called the Great Compromiser, and a compromise is a way of settling an agreement by getting each side a little less than what they want. He worked out a solution that kept the number of slave states equal to the number of freed states. So over here, if you see in our notes, if Missouri joined as a slave state, up here, Maine has to also join as a free state to keep the balance, okay? This was to keep the balance between the representation between the slave states and the freed states. I'm going to get my red pen. At the same time, a line was drawn across the U.S. at 3630, stating that above that line, all other territories gained by the Louisiana Purchase would be slave free. And this is known as the Missouri Compromise line. And here it is right here. I'm going to take my red pen. Okay. I'm going to keep it going because guess what? You know, we're going to go out in the California gold rush. We're going to go all about to California. Here's the edge of the United States here. Okay. So this compromise said that, okay, you can be a slave state if we get this free state, but from here on out, everything north of that line has got to be free. No slavery. Okay. So time moves on. 1849, 1848, we have the discovery of gold. 1849, we start moving further out west. We get that California gold rush. Okay. So we have some more states that want to enter the United States of America, more territory that want to become states. So the Compromise of 1850, Congress had to decide if California would join the Union as a free or a slave state, because the line goes right in half. Here's our line again. Oops, sorry, right there. And you can see California's crossing the line. So is it going to be free or is it going to be a slave state? Okay. And then we also have the rest of the Mexican territory, which was the Utah territory and the New Mexico territory. So we got to decide, are they going to be slave states? So again, we see Henry Clay, the great compromiser, along with a senator named Stephen Douglas. We'll talk about him a little more in the future. And a senator, Daniel Webster, and they came up with this idea. Now, Henry Clay, Kentucky, Stephen Douglas, Illinois, Daniel Webster, Massachusetts. So we've kind of got some Northern and Southerners working together there. Well, they decided that California would enter the Union as a free state. Yay, that's wonderful. But the rest of the Mexican territory, this is what we got from that Mexican-American War when we fought that, okay? They got to decide. Do you see a problem with Utah just getting to decide? It's about the line. It's supposed to be free, okay? So New Mexico were like, I hope they decide to be free, even though it's below the line, but it really breaks the compromise they had just decided on, okay? A couple other things were slipped in there, other things included. It was now illegal to buy and sell slaves in Washington, D.C. That's a good thing. You cannot buy or sell slaves. But if you already have slaves, it's okay to own them. Still not great. Okay, and then we come up with the Fugitive Slave Act. It's no longer legal for a slave owner to go after and capture runaway slaves. So if you were an escaped slave on the Underground Railroad, before the Southern slave owner could come and hunt you down. Whereas now they're saying that it's illegal to do that. Now, you and I both know that just because it was illegal doesn't mean that that kept the plantation owners from not going and doing that. Okay, but that was just another little thing snuck in. So we had a compromise, no slavery here. Had a compromise here, but they're like, you get to decide. So it kind of made this one kind of canceled this one out. It made it a little wishy-washy. Okay. At the same time, in 1852, we have a book published by Harriet Beecher Stowe. And you might have heard the expression, the pen is mightier than the sword, meaning that words that we read can be very powerful. And that's just what happened with this book. And right here, you get a brief synopsis, a summary of what Uncle Tom's Cabin was about. Uncle Tom's Cabin tells the story of Uncle Tom, an enslaved person. And he is depicted as saintly, dignified, noble, and steadfast in his beliefs. While being transported by boat to auction in New Orleans, Tom saves the life of little Eva, an angelic and forgiving young girl, whose grateful father then purchases Tom. So Eva is a white girl that Tom has saved. Eva and Tom soon become great friends. Always frail, Eva's health begins to decline rapidly, and on her deathbed, she asks her father to free all of his enslaved people. He makes plans to do so, but is then killed. And the brutal Simon Legree, Tom's new owner, has Tom whipped to death after he refuses to divulge the whereabouts of other escaped slaves. Tom maintains a steadfastly Christian attitude towards his own suffering. So this was a story that people read and they related to Tom's character. This is really one of the first times we have a slave as a lead character and depicted as kind and noble and dignified and helpful. And we have the slave owner, Simon Legree, depicted very mean and negative. And so it started to change people's minds about slavery. It started to make those who were kind of on the fence, those who had not really thought about it, kind of made them go, this slavery is wrong. So again, we just see the mindset of people start to change. And Uncle Tom's Cabin was one of the best-selling novels, the second best book of all of the 19th century, followed only by the Bible. And it created with helping fuel that abolitionist cause. And the first year after it was published, 300,000 copies of the book were sold in the United States and 1 million copies were sold in Great Britain. So that's how many people were reading this and being impacted by that story. The novel had a profound effect on people's attitudes towards African Americans because they got to see an African American as a dignified person, not a property. And the idea of slavery in the United States was changed. And it's said to have helped lay the groundwork for the Civil War, which is what we're leading up to. So all three of these things, this debate, do we have slaves out west? Do we not? And the laws being made and the northern and southern lawmakers fighting about it. Here again, these new territories that are coming in, are they going to be slave or not slave? And then this book really changing Americans' opinions. I mean, 300,000 people reading a book can have impact on how our country looks at things. So short notes. There's plenty of videos on the Padlet. I'm going to put my top ones on today, and then I'm going to list other resources. I hope that you'll go and learn more about these three big events so that you are prepared for the quiz and so that you know our story. This is our story as the United States citizens. And I will see you next time, and we will talk about the other events that I hope you cut out and glued in. So next time we'll start with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Bye, guys.